You are not disturbed by life, but by your unexamined judgments about it. Every reaction you have already shaped your day before reason was allowed to speak. And this is where your freedom is either lost or recovered. You feel the pressure of thoughts that arrive without permission, the quick assumptions, the quiet complaints, the urge to blame what is outside your control. Yet none of these are final unless you agree with them. The mind becomes stable only when it learns to separate what depends on you from what does not, and chooses virtue over impulse in that space. If you are ready to stop living on reaction and start living on reason, stay here and continue. Subscribe and remain with this work, not as entertainment, but as training for the inner life. Number 1. Master your judgments before seeking control over anything else. Stop now and look at your own mind. Not the noise around you, not the faces of other people, not the work that waits on your desk, or the messages you have not answered, or the plans you have delayed again and again. Look at the place where your life is actually being ruled. Look at the judgment you place on each event before you ever speak, act, resist, or surrender. That is where your life is shaped, not by the event itself, by the meaning you give it, by the story you attach to it, by the judgment you accept without question. Most people live as if the world is striking them from the outside, and they are helpless to respond with dignity. They say they are disturbed by other people. They say they are ruined by bad luck. They say they are made angry by disrespect. They say they are crushed by loss. They say they cannot help their fear because the situation is too hard. But a person who thinks this way has already given away the first and greatest rule of freedom. You are not enslaved by what happens. You are enslaved by the judgment you give to what happens. That is the place where the battle begins. That is the place where it must be won. Do not let yourself hide behind the comfort of blaming events. A harsh word is not enough to wound you unless you agree to be wounded. A delay is not enough to ruin your day unless you declare it a ruin. A loss is not enough to defeat you unless you decide that your worth has been taken with it. A failure is not enough to break you unless you build your identity on success and hand your soul over to outcomes that never belonged to you. The body may be struck, reputation may be damaged, plans may fail, people may leave, money may vanish, health may weaken. None of this is the final master unless your own judgment bows before it. So begin here. Learn to catch your first impression. That first flash of anger, that first tightening in the chest, that first thought that says this should not be happening, that first impulse to panic, accuse, beg, or collapse. Do not trust it. A first impression is not truth. It is only an appearance. The mind sees something and rushes to a conclusion, but a trained mind waits. A trained mind asks whether the impression is in harmony with reason. A trained mind does not kneel before every feeling that enters the room. It receives the feeling, examines it, and decides whether it deserves authority. This is how freedom begins. You must understand that the mind can become a servant of chaos or a servant of reason. There is no middle ground for long. If you do not train judgment, it will be trained for you by fear, appetite, pride, and habit. Every day the mind is offered 1,000 temptations to misread life. It is told that comfort is necessity. It is told that praise is proof of worth. It is told that offense must be answered at once. It is told that inconvenience is injustice. It is told that suffering is humiliation. These are lies. They are loud lies, repeated so often that many people call them common sense. But a life built on false judgment becomes a prison with no bars visible to the eye. To master your mind is not to silence every thought. That is impossible. It is to rule what you consent to. You do not control the first appearance of a thought. You control the welcome you give it. You control whether you feed it, obey it, or dismiss it. You control whether you turn a spark into a fire. This is the work of self-government. This is the work that no one can do for you. Your teacher can point the way. Your books can show the discipline. Your own conscience must do the labor. So when fear rises, do not ask first whether the fear feels intense. Ask whether the fear is true. Fear is often only a prediction made by a restless mind. It says you will fail. It says they will reject you. It says the pain will not end. It says you cannot bear what is ahead. But who gave fear the right to judge the future? Who appointed it as ruler over your reason? Fear has no wisdom of its own. It borrows your imagination and poisons it. It takes what is uncertain and dresses it as certain disaster. A disciplined mind does not argue with every fearful fantasy. It turns the lamp of reason toward it and asks what is actually within its power. This is the first great dividing line you must learn to see clearly every day. Some things are up to you. Your judgments are up to you. Your choices are up to you. Your desires are up to you. Your actions are up to you. Your refusal to lie to yourself is up to you. Your willingness to meet hardship with dignity is up to you. But the responses of other people are not up to you. The weather is not up to you. Time is not up to you. The body will age. Plans will be interrupted. Success will never stay in your hands by force. If you confuse these two realms, you will suffer endlessly. If you separate them, you will become harder to shake. Each morning, before the world gets its hands on your attention, make this separation plain. Say to yourself what belongs to me today: my judgment, my choice, my effort, my character. What does not belong to me? The praise of others, the behavior of others, the outcome of events, the appearance of things, the length of my life, the health I do not command, the future that has not yet come. Begin there, and you will have already removed a great burden. Many people spend their lives trying to carry what was never theirs. They strain against the unchangeable and call their suffering noble. It is not noble to fight reality. It is foolish. Strength is not in denial. Strength is in understanding where power ends and duty begins. When you know what is yours to govern, you stop wasting the morning on vain concern. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head that have not happened. You stop chasing approval before you have even acted well. You stop building your mood on the weather of other people's opinions. You begin to think like a person whose inner house must remain in order regardless of the storm outside. This is not coldness. This is clarity. It is the beginning of peace. But let us go further, because a weak judgment does not only distort fear, it distorts desire as well. The undisciplined mind is always begging to be fed. It says, I must have this or I cannot be content. I must be admired. I must win. I must be seen. I must have comfort now. I must avoid discomfort at once. It confuses impulse with need. It confuses preference with necessity. It confuses appetite with right. That is why so many people are restless even in abundance. They have trained themselves to think that peace lies just beyond the next acquisition, the next approval, the next advantage. But desire without discipline is a mouth that never learns it is full. Train your judgment here too. Before you reach for anything, ask what you are really judging it to be. Are you calling it good when it is only pleasant? Are you calling it bad when it is only difficult? Are you making yourself a slave to comfort by treating discomfort as if it were harm? The body dislikes cold. The body dislikes hunger. The body dislikes effort. That is natural. But reason does not surrender to bodily complaint. Reason knows that hardship is not an evil. It is often a field of training. If you never practice discomfort willingly, then when discomfort arrives without permission, you will be exposed as untrained. So practice small refusals. Do not make your day a hunt for ease. Take the harder seat sometimes. Walk when you could remain idle. Leave space between impulse and action. Eat with restraint. Speak without vanity. Listen without preparing your own defense. Let your mind learn that not every desire needs immediate obedience. The person who can say no to himself becomes far less vulnerable to the world. The person who cannot say no to himself will be commanded by every passing appetite and every external temptation. Now hear this clearly. Mastering judgment does not mean becoming harsh with yourself in the way the proud are harsh. It means becoming honest. The weak mind avoids truth because truth demands change. It says, I am fine when it is not fine. It says, I will begin tomorrow when tomorrow becomes a hiding place. It says, this habit is not serious. It says the anger was justified. It says the excuse is reasonable. It says the failure was someone else's fault. This is how the soul decays while the face remains respectable. Examine yourself without excuses. Ask where you are childish. Ask where you complain too quickly. Ask where you demand from life what you have not earned. Ask where you are ruled by fear of being seen plainly. Ask where your choices are governed by pleasure instead of principle. Ask where you have mistaken busyness for discipline. Ask where you have confused knowledge with transformation. You do not become stronger by admiring strength. You become stronger by practicing it in the hidden moments when no one applauds. There is a great temptation in the modern world to live on reaction. Something happens and the hand reaches for the phone. Someone offends and the mouth answers at once. An inconvenience appears and the heart flares with complaint. A desire rises and the body follows it. This is a life of drift. It feels active, but it is passive. It looks alive, but it is borrowed. You are being moved like a leaf in the wind and calling it personality. But a rational being is not meant to be moved by every gust. A rational being is meant to choose, and choice begins with the pause. The pause is sacred. Between the impression and the response there is a narrow space where your freedom lives. In that space you can ask what is true. In that space you can ask what is fitting. In that space you can ask what virtue requires. Do this in small matters and you will be prepared for large ones. When the insult comes, pause. When the setback comes, pause. When the craving comes, pause. When the praise comes, pause. Praise can corrupt judgment as surely as insult can. A mind that loves applause will eventually betray itself to keep hearing it. You must train the habit of examination until it becomes natural. When an impression appears, say to yourself, you are only an impression and not the thing itself. Then ask whether the thing is within your control. Ask whether it depends on your judgment. Ask whether this reaction would make you more just, more disciplined, more courageous, more wise. If it would not, release it. There is no virtue in clinging to a bad judgment simply because it arrived first. The first thought is not the best thought. Often it is merely the loudest. People suffer because they rush to agreement with their own thoughts. They think, because they feel something strongly, it must be true. It is not so. Strength of feeling proves only strength of feeling. It does not prove wisdom. A mind that has not been trained will defend its own error with passion. It will call stubbornness conviction. It will call anxiety foresight. It will call vanity self-respect. It will call resentment justice. It will call lust love. It will call laziness exhaustion. This is why you must become your own stern examiner. Do not flatter your mind. Do not indulge every excuse. Do not let feeling become law. Look at your reactions in ordinary life, for there the truth is exposed. Watch how you respond when someone interrupts you. Watch what happens when your plan is delayed. Watch how you behave when you are not noticed. Watch whether you are irritated when things move slowly. Watch whether your mood depends on comfort, convenience, and control. These are not trivial tests. They reveal whether your soul is ruled by reason or by appetite. And do not say these tests are too small to matter. A person is not made in the grand moment alone. He is made in the repeated daily choices that no one sees. The mind that judges well becomes steady in the face of change. It does not demand that life obey it. It asks only to meet life honorably. This is a great relief. When you stop demanding that reality be different before you can be peaceful, you remove the chief obstacle to peace. You understand that the present moment is not asking for your approval, it is asking for your response. Your task is not to rewrite the universe, your task is to act with justice, self-control, courage and wisdom within the universe you have been given. Do not misunderstand acceptance. Acceptance is not defeat. It is not passive surrender to every event. It is not softness in the face of wrongdoing. Acceptance means that you stop fighting what has already been made real by nature or by fact. It means you see clearly what is yours to oppose and what is yours to bear. It means you refuse to waste your inner life on resentment toward what cannot be altered. The person who accepts reality can still act. In fact, only such a person can act well. The person who denies reality is trapped in fantasy and confusion. He may move, but he does not govern himself. There will be pain in life. There will be disappointment. There will be seasons of confusion when you do not know why things are happening as they are. There will be times when your body feels weak, and your plans collapse, and your relations strain, and your mind grows tired. None of this is surprising. A human life is not a polished hall with no dust. It is a place of testing. You are not here to demand exemption from the conditions of being human. You are here to meet those conditions with character. This is why the discipline of judgment matters so deeply. If you judge pain to be unbearable before you have tested yourself, you have already lost. If you judge inconvenience to be intolerable, you have already become fragile. If you judge hardship to be evil, you have made yourself dependent on a life with no hardship, but no such life exists. Therefore, prepare now. Tell yourself in advance that whatever comes will be met with reason. Tell yourself that you can bear more than you think if you refuse to add fear to fact. Much of suffering is not the event. It is the commentary your mind adds to the event. When difficulty appears, do not ask why me in the spirit of complaint. Ask what is required of me now. That question turns the mind from vanity to duty. It returns you from self-pity to action. Self-pity is a form of judgment gone rotten. It insists that reality has singled you out unfairly and that your pain excuses your disorder. But pain never excuses moral weakness. Pain is precisely the place where moral strength is revealed. A person who remains just while suffering is stronger than one who prospers while corrupt. So use hardship as a teacher. When something inconvenient happens, do not immediately react with bitterness. Observe what it awakens in you. Does it expose impatience, vanity, fear, attachment? Good. Now you know where the work is. A problem revealed is a lesson given. The untrained person only wants the discomfort gone. The trained person wants the soul improved by what has occurred. This is not because pain is pleasant. It is because virtue is more valuable than comfort. And once you believe the truth, your whole life changes. At times you will notice that your mind tries to bargain. It says, I will be disciplined later. I will stop reacting after this one problem. I will be better when I feel better. I will examine myself when life is calmer. This is how people remain unchanged for years. They wait for a perfect inner weather before practicing the art of governing the self. But the calm mind is not found by waiting. It is built by practice in the middle of ordinary disorder. There is no better time than now, because now is the only time you possess. Take up a daily examination of your judgments. In the morning, prepare your mind for the day. Say to yourself that you will meet people who are arrogant, impatient, dishonest, fearful, and ungrateful. Say it not because you wish to condemn them, but because you refuse to be surprised by human weakness. Human beings act from ignorance of the good. They pursue what appears pleasant and avoid what appears painful. If you remember this, you will not be thrown into fury each time someone behaves badly. You will understand that they are acting from their own judgments just as you are struggling to govern yours. This understanding protects you from unnecessary outrage. But do not use understanding as an excuse to become soft with your own failings. Be patient with human weakness in others. Be severe with it in yourself. That is fair. You are responsible for your own judgments. You are responsible for whether you feed resentment or release it. You are responsible for whether you answer insult with justice or with impulse. You are responsible for whether you let a craving shape your day or whether you hold it at the gate and ask whether it serves virtue. Responsibility is not a burden placed on you by cruelty. It is the very ground of your dignity. When you master judgment, you stop being a victim of appearances. A thing no longer becomes what it seems at first glance. You begin to distinguish the appearance from the fact. A harsh email is not an injury. It is text on a screen until you decide otherwise. A failed effort is not humiliation. It is an outcome that offers information and demands further effort. A difficult conversation is not a disaster. It is a chance to speak with courage and restraint. A lonely evening is not emptiness. It is a test of whether your own company has become intolerable because you have neglected your own mind. Many things that people call suffering are only opportunities to reveal what they have made of themselves. This is why inner work matters more than outer display. It is easy to appear strong when conditions are favorable. It is easy to be calm when no one presses you. It is easy to speak of discipline while life is still comfortable. The test comes when your attention is divided, when your desires are strong, when you are tired, when you are not recognized, when your plan is interrupted, when your body feels reluctant, when your emotions ask for quick relief. In those moments the truth appears. Do not hate those moments. They are the forge of character. What does daily practice look like? It looks like beginning the day with intention rather than appetite. Before you open yourself to messages and noise, remind yourself that your task is not to control the day but to control your conduct within it. It looks like pausing before you answer. It looks like checking every judgment against reason. It looks like refusing to call a thing terrible merely because it is unpleasant. It looks like asking whether your opinion of the moment would remain the same if you were calmer and more honest. It looks like ending the day by reviewing where you were ruled by impulse and where you stood firm. This review is not for shame, it is for correction. When you review your day, do not lie to yourself. If you reacted badly, say so. If you indulged fear, say so. If you spoke too soon, say so. If you envied another, say so. If you made peace with an excuse, say so. Then do not drown in guilt. Guilt without correction is vanity wearing a dark robe. Learn, amend, and continue. The point is not to worship your failure. The point is to strip it of illusion. A mind that can confess clearly can improve clearly. You will notice that much of inner freedom comes from refusing unnecessary judgments. The world presents countless things that are neither good nor evil in themselves. A position at work, a compliment, a delay, a loss, a body change, a cancelled plan, a person's mood. These things are not the final measure of your life. You measure them. You decide whether they help or hinder virtue. Once you see this, the drama of life loses much of its power over you, not because you become indifferent to all things, but because you give each thing its proper place. A person governed by judgment does not become cold, he becomes just. He does not become passive, he becomes deliberate. He does not become lifeless, he becomes stable. He can enjoy what comes without dependency. He can suffer what comes without collapse. He can lose what comes and still preserve what is best within him. That is a high form of freedom. Most people never taste it because they mistake emotional intensity for life. But life is not measured by how strongly you react. It is measured by how faithfully you live according to reason. There is another danger here. Once you begin to value judgment, you may become proud of it. Guard against that. The moment you think yourself better because you understand a principle, you have already begun to lose it. Wisdom is not proved by admiration for wisdom. It is proved by conduct. A mind that praises itself too much stops listening. It begins to defend its own image instead of seeking truth. So remain humble before reason. Use it, do not display it. Honor it by obedience, not by speech. When you feel yourself becoming irritated by small things, do not say the world is too difficult. Say my judgment is weak here. When you feel anxious about the future, do not say the future is unbearable. Say the first I'm adding fear to uncertainty. When you feel pulled by desire, do not say desire is stronger than I am. Say the first have not trained myself enough yet. This language is hard because it is honest. That is exactly why it helps. It puts the burden where it belongs and returns your power to you. What you tell yourself matters. The mind follows repeated judgments like a path worn through ground. If you keep telling yourself that you are unlucky, you will live as if luck governs you. If you keep telling yourself that you are trapped, you will behave as if the doors are closed even when one of them is in your own hands. If you keep telling yourself that you are too weak to change, you will remain weak. But if you tell yourself that every judgment can be examined, every impulse can be tested, every reaction can be delayed, every choice can be chosen, you begin to stand upright in your own life. Do not wait for inspiration. The disciplined life does not depend on being moved. It depends on being committed. There will be days when you feel clear and days when you feel foggy, days when the mind is sharp and days when it resists every noble intention. On both kinds of days, the same work remains. Examine, choose, endure, return. The art is not in occasional greatness. The art is in steadfastness. The mind that returns again and again to reason becomes strong through repetition, not spectacle. When you are tempted to think that your circumstances prevent your growth, remember that the central field of training is always available. You may not be able to command events, but you can command your judgment of events. You may not be able to stop hardship, but you can choose your response. You may not be able to make people wise, but you can refuse to become foolish because they are foolish. You may not be able to avoid pain, but you can avoid the added pain of panic and complaint. This is a great power. Do not treat it lightly. Men and women waste their lives chasing control where none exists while neglecting the control that has been given to them. So ask yourself now, as plainly as possible, what judgment is ruling me today? What am I calling unbearable that is only uncomfortable? What am I calling necessary that is only desired? What am I calling disaster that is only disappointment? What am I calling impossible that is only inconvenient? What am I calling true because it flatters my fear? What am I refusing to see because seeing it would require change? Sit with these questions. Do not escape them. They are the doorway to a better life. If your mind has been undisciplined, then expect resistance. The mind does not surrender its old habits without protest. It will try to drag you back to complaint, distraction, craving, and false certainty. This is not a sign that your effort is failing. It is a sign that the old ruler is being challenged. Stand firm. Do not negotiate with every impulse. Do not give every feeling a vote. Reason is not one voice among many. It is the part of you meant to rule. Let it rule. There is dignity in a person who can remain steady when others are agitated. There is dignity in a person who does not collapse under criticism. There is dignity in a person who can face uncertainty without inventing a story to soothe it. There is dignity in a person who can lose without becoming bitter and win without becoming vain. That dignity is not accidental. It is the product of trained judgment. You can have it too, but not by wishing, by work. Therefore begin today, not tomorrow, not after the next convenience. Today, watch your first judgment, challenge what is false, accept what is real, separate what depends on you from what does not. Refuse to call pleasure good and pain evil without examination. Refuse to let fear speak as if it knows the future. Refuse to let desire command as if it were wisdom. Refuse to let complaints become a habit. Refuse to sleep through your own life. Each refusal is a small victory. Each victory strengthens your character. Each strengthened character becomes harder to shake. And when the day ends, do not waste it. Sit alone for a moment and ask where you were ruled and where you ruled yourself. Ask where you spoke too quickly. Ask where you gave in to irritation. Ask where you remained just. Ask where you endured. Ask where you judged well. Ask where you must correct tomorrow. This is how a life is rebuilt from the inside, not by grand declarations, by repeated honesty. You do not need a different world to begin. You need a better judgment. You do not need a painless life to become strong. You need a disciplined mind. You do not need every event to favor you. You need to stop making your peace depend on events. That peace belongs to the inner ruler alone. Guard it, train it, test it. Trust it only when it has earned trust through reason. Nothing can break the person who refuses to surrender his judgment to fear, appetite, or the opinion of the crowd. Such a person may be struck by life. He may be delayed, denied, tested, and burdened, but he will not be conquered, for the place where he lives is not at the mercy of the storm. It is within reason, it is within virtue, it is within the self that has finally learned to govern itself. And once you have that, once your mind is no longer a runaway servant to every impression, then you have begun to live as a free human being. Then you can face the day without begging it to spare you. Then you can stand in the middle of loss, pressure, and uncertainty, and say with quiet truth that what is good in me is still mine, not given, not borrowed, not fragile. Mine because I chose it, guarded it, and practiced it until it became my way of being. Number 2. Accept only what reason proves belongs within your control. There is a question you have avoided for far too long, not because it is difficult to understand, but because answering it honestly would require you to change the way you live. What truly belongs to you, not what you possess, not what people say about you, not the position you hold, not the plans you have carefully arranged. Ask instead what cannot be taken from you without your own consent. Until you answer this with complete honesty, your peace will remain fragile because you will continue placing your confidence in things that have never belonged to your authority. Look carefully at how your days unfold. A conversation does not go as expected and your mood changes. Someone ignores your effort and resentment quietly enters your heart. A plan fails and you begin to doubt yourself. News arrives that you never wished to hear, and suddenly your mind races in every direction searching for certainty where none can be found. You believe these moments are creating your suffering, yet they are only revealing where your attention has been misplaced. Your distress is showing you that you have invested your peace in territory you were never meant to govern. Reason asks a different question from the one your impulses ask. Your impulses ask whether life is giving you what you want. Reason asks whether you are responding according to your highest duty. One question produces endless dissatisfaction because circumstances constantly change. The other creates stability because it directs your attention toward the only place where genuine freedom can exist. If every event determines your peace, then your life belongs to chance. If your own character determines your peace, then no uncertain future can steal it before it arrives. Many people spend years attempting to organize the world while neglecting the discipline of organizing themselves. They carefully manage schedules, finances, appearances, and ambitions, yet leave their own judgments unexamined. They become experts in directing external affairs while remaining strangers to their own minds. Then they wonder why success never quiets their restlessness. They have built order around themselves while allowing disorder to remain within. No arrangement of external conditions can compensate for an undisciplined inner life. The first discipline you must practice each morning is not making a list of everything that might happen. It is reminding yourself of what remains yours regardless of what happens. Before the demands of the day begin speaking loudly, sit quietly for a few moments and establish your proper field of responsibility. Tell yourself that your honesty belongs to you, your patience belongs to you, your willingness to act justly belongs to you, your ability to restrain anger belongs to you, your effort belongs to you, your decisions belong to you. Everything beyond these deserves your attention only after you have secured command over yourself. Notice how often your thoughts travel toward matters where your authority cannot reach. You replay conversations that have already ended. You attempt to predict responses that have not yet been given. You imagine failures that exist only in possibility. You carry the imagined opinions of others as though they were written into reality. Hours disappear while your mind struggles against shadows, yet none of these efforts produce wisdom because none of them alter what lies outside your command. A disciplined mind refuses to waste its strength wrestling with what cannot be governed. This refusal is not indifference, it is proper allocation of effort. There are situations that demand action, courage, and perseverance. There are wrongs that require honest speech. There are responsibilities that call for your full attention. Stoic discipline never asks you to become passive. It asks you to distinguish carefully between acting well and demanding results. Your responsibility is wholehearted effort guided by reason. The outcome remains where it has always been, beyond complete human control. Consider how often disappointment begins, long before any event occurs. You create detailed expectations for people, believing they will understand your intentions perfectly. You expect every plan to unfold without interruption. You expect your body never to weaken, your work always to succeed, your relationships never to change. Then reality quietly follows its own course, and you call reality unfair simply because it ignored your expectations. Yet nature never promised obedience to your preferences. It promised only that every human being would have opportunities to exercise virtue. Expectation becomes dangerous when it disguises itself as certainty. The mind begins treating preferred outcomes as guaranteed outcomes. Once this confusion settles into your thinking, every ordinary setback feels like betrayal. You no longer meet events as they arrive. You measure every event against fantasies that existed only inside your own imagination. Then frustration appears, not because life violated justice, but because your expectations abandoned reason. Train yourself to replace expectation with preparation. Preparation asks how you will respond if difficulties arise. Expectation insists difficulties should never appear. Preparation strengthens character because it develops readiness. Expectation weakens character because it depends upon favorable circumstances remaining unchanged. One approach builds resilience before hardship arrives. The other collapses the moment reality refuses to cooperate. Throughout your day, interruptions will present themselves without invitation. Someone will misunderstand your intentions. Delays will appear, mistakes will occur, fatigue will visit both body and mind. These moments are not obstacles preventing your philosophical practice. They are the practice itself. Every interruption quietly asks one question: will you surrender your peace to this event, or will you remain faithful to reason? You may believe your greatest challenge is finding enough time, enough money, enough recognition, or enough certainty. Often your greatest challenge is far simpler. It is remembering that your next judgment is always your responsibility. Every circumstance places a decision before you. Will you complain or examine? Will you accuse or understand? Will you react or deliberate? The quality of your life depends less upon what stands before you than upon which of these paths you repeatedly choose. There is remarkable freedom in admitting the limits of your authority. The undisciplined mind fears limitation because it mistakes acceptance for defeat. Yet the opposite is true. Refusing to accept limits creates endless conflict with reality. Accepting them directs your strength toward meaningful action. The sailor cannot command the wind, but he can govern his skill. The farmer cannot order the seasons, but he can faithfully cultivate the field. Likewise, you cannot command every event, but you can cultivate the character that meets every event. When someone criticizes you, pause before defending yourself. First, examine whether the criticism reveals truth. If it does, gratitude serves you better than wounded pride because correction strengthens your character. If the criticism is false, why surrender your peace to an error that does not change who you truly are? Either way, reason remains your guide. Pride demands immediate reaction. Wisdom requires careful examination. Likewise, when praise arrives, receive it with moderation. Do not build your identity upon approval any more than you build it upon criticism. The crowd often praises what lacks virtue and condemns what possesses it. If your self-worth depends upon voices outside yourself, your stability will rise and fall with every opinion. Let praise encourage continued diligence without allowing it to become the foundation of your confidence. Many people believe self-control appears suddenly during moments of great difficulty. In truth, it is cultivated quietly through ordinary decisions repeated consistently. Each time you choose patience instead of irritation, you strengthen your command over yourself. Each time you refuse unnecessary complaint, you loosen another chain tying your happiness to circumstances. Each time you distinguish clearly between what belongs to your effort and what belongs to fortune, your judgment becomes steadier. Guard your attention carefully because attention determines where your life is spent. Every hour devoted to resentment is an hour unavailable for virtue. Every moment surrendered to envy is a moment removed from useful action. Every anxious rehearsal of uncertain futures steals strength from the present responsibility waiting before you. Your attention is one of the few resources completely entrusted to your care. Spend it wisely. When anxiety begins speaking, listen carefully to what it demands. Usually it demands certainty about tomorrow, yet certainty has never been promised. The future remains hidden not to punish you, but to keep your attention rooted where your duty actually exists. You prepare wisely for what may come, but you live faithfully within what is already here. Anxiety continually invites you to abandon today's responsibilities in exchange for imaginary control over tomorrow. Decline that invitation. Each evening, return quietly to yourself before sleep. Review your day with complete honesty. Ask where you spent energy trying to command what was never yours. Ask where you neglected responsibilities that truly belonged to you. Ask whether your speech reflected justice. Ask whether your decisions reflected reason. Ask whether fear persuaded you to abandon your principles. This examination is not performed to produce guilt. It exists to produce clarity. What is seen clearly can be corrected. What remains hidden continues directing your life unnoticed. Never measure your progress by the absence of difficulty. Measure it by the quality of your response when difficulty arrives. Storms reveal whether foundations are secure. Likewise, adversity reveals whether your understanding has become practice. Anyone can speak calmly when life grants comfort. The disciplined person remains calm because peace has been anchored where changing circumstances cannot easily reach. You will sometimes fail. You will discover moments when irritation outruns wisdom or fear silences courage. Do not allow failure to become another excuse for abandoning discipline. Instead, treat each mistake as instruction. Every lapse reveals another area requiring attention. Every weakness honestly acknowledged becomes an opportunity for stronger judgment tomorrow. Only the person who refuses examination remains trapped by repeated error. Remember that your character is formed gradually through countless ordinary choices rather than dramatic moments. Great integrity grows from small acts of consistency. Quiet honesty practiced daily becomes unshakable honesty during crisis. Small acts of restraint become lasting self-command. Patient attention to simple duties prepares the soul for larger responsibilities when they arrive. There is no greater mistake than believing your peace depends upon arranging the world according to your preferences. The world has always moved according to causes beyond any individual's command. Your task has never been to master every event. Your task has always been to master the way you meet every event. Once this distinction becomes part of your daily thinking, much unnecessary suffering begins to disappear. You stop demanding certainty where uncertainty naturally belongs. You stop seeking permanence in what constantly changes. You stop asking the world to provide what only disciplined character can create. From this day forward, become careful about every thought that claims something outside your authority must change before you can live well. Challenge that thought immediately. Ask whether reason truly supports it, or whether it merely reflects habit, fear, or attachment. Refuse to grant authority to judgments that weaken your character. Accept only what reason proves belongs within your control. Guard those things with unwavering diligence, for they are the only possessions that can never be taken from you without your own consent. When your attention remains there, your mind becomes steadier, your actions become more deliberate, your relationships become more just, and your life gradually reflects the quiet strength of a soul governed not by circumstance, but by reason itself. Number 3. Reject every fearful thought before it rules your actions. Fear is never the first truth. It is only the first alarm. The mind sees a possibility and begins to tremble as if possibility were fact. It hears a rumor and starts building a future from it. It feels the body tighten and assumes danger has already arrived. This is where many lives are lost before any real event has happened. Not to swords, not to storms, to imagination, to the false authority of a thought that was never examined. You do not suffer because the world has spoken. You suffer because your mind has rushed to verdict before reason has entered the room. Look at the ordinary shape of fear, and you will see how quietly it governs a person. A difficult conversation is coming, and the heart begins rehearsing defeat. A task looks heavy, and the mind begins searching for escape. An uncertain future appears, and immediately the inner voice begins writing disasters. A person who fears too quickly does not merely feel afraid. He begins to live as though fear were wisdom. He delays what should be done. He avoids what should be faced. He shrinks from what might strengthen him. Then he calls this caution. It is not caution. It is surrender dressed as prudence. You must learn to meet every fearful thought as a claimant and not a king. It arrives asking for your agreement. Do not give it at once. Ask what it is. Ask whether it is a fact or only an appearance. Ask whether it is within your power or beyond it. Ask whether it calls you toward virtue or away from it. This is the work of a disciplined mind. It does not applaud every warning the instant it appears. It examines the messenger before following the message. Fear thrives when the mind forgets the difference between what may happen and what has happened. The future is full of shadows because it has not yet taken shape. Fear pretends those shadows are solid walls. It takes uncertainty and turns it into certainty of harm. But uncertainty is not danger. Uncertainty is simply the condition under which human beings must act with reason. You are not asked to know everything before you move. You are asked to be just while you move. You are not asked to guarantee outcomes. You are asked to govern your choices. The person ruled by fear will always find reasons to delay the hard thing. He will say he is not ready. He will say the conditions are not right. He will say more information is needed. Sometimes preparation is wise. Often these phrases conceal a refusal to endure discomfort. Fear does not always scream. Sometimes it speaks in careful language. It pretends to be thoughtful while quietly protecting weakness. It tells you to wait when what it really means is that it wants to avoid strain. But your character is not forged in avoidance. It is forged in action guided by reason, even when the heart trembles. Do not ask how to erase fear completely. Ask how to refuse its rule. A fearful thought may rise. That is not failure. Failure begins when you give the thought authority over your conduct. The first movement of the soul is not always chosen. The second one is. In that second movement lies your freedom. You can pause, you can question, you can refuse to obey the first rush of panic. You can let reason stand between appearance and action. This small pause is one of the greatest defenses a human being possesses. Begin each morning by preparing your mind for the day, not with hopes of comfort, but with readiness for disturbance. Tell yourself plainly that you may meet impatience, misunderstanding, delay, loss, awkwardness, and fatigue. Do not say this to invite misery. Say it so that your mind will not be surprised into weakness. A person who expects every path to be smooth becomes fragile at the first stone. A person who has prepared himself for rough ground walks with steadier feet. Preparation is not pessimism. It is the practice of seeing reality without decoration. When fearful thoughts come in the morning, they often wear the mask of urgency. They say you must act now or lose everything. They say hesitation will destroy you. They say the worst is already near. Stop. Before you answer the fear, ask what duty actually stands before you. Most fear multiplies in the absence of clear duty. When the mind has no firm task, it begins inventing disasters to fill the space. So give the mind its proper work. What is required now? What is honest now? What is just now? What is within my control now? Let these questions cut through the fog. There is a particular cruelty in fear when it turns the self against itself. It says you are not capable. It says you will fail as you have failed before. It says your past weakness proves your future weakness. This is a false judge. The past does not imprison the soul unless you consent to be defined by it. A person is never finished while reason remains available. You may have been cowardly yesterday. You may have been scattered, reactive, and small. That does not make fear your master today. It only means you must begin where you stand and choose differently now. The mind that rejects fear before it rules action does not become hard and blind. It becomes clear. It sees that many of the things fear points toward are outside its command. Other people's choices are outside your command. The length of your life is outside your command. The exact shape of tomorrow is outside your command. The response of the crowd is outside your command. The weather of events is outside your command. But your judgment about these things belongs to you. Your choice belongs to you. Your courage belongs to you. Your refusal to abandon reason belongs to you. If fear attacks from beyond your control, then it has already overreached. Bring it back to its proper size. This is why the practice of dividing what is yours from what is not yours matters so deeply. Fear survives on confusion. It mixes all things together until the mind feels surrounded by threats it cannot distinguish. But reason is a sorter. It separates fact from fantasy. It separates responsibility from illusion. It separates action from outcome. When you see clearly what is yours to handle, fear loses much of its theater. The stage becomes smaller. The noise becomes less persuasive. You realize that you have been standing before your own thoughts, as though they were commanders when in truth they are only appearances asking for review. When a fearful thought appears, ask whether it helps you live according to virtue. If it does not, then it need not rule you. Does this thought help me act with courage? Does it help me remain just? Does it help me show discipline? Does it help me speak truthfully? Does it help me endure with steadiness? If the answer is no, then this thought may be loud, but it is not wise. Not every feeling deserves obedience. Not every warning deserves trust. Not every anxiety deserves your consent. Many people make themselves smaller by imagining the pain of events that may never happen. They live through tomorrow's imagined loss today and call that preparation. It is not preparation, it is self-inflicted suffering. They sit in the present while lending their mind to a future that has not arrived. Then they exhaust themselves before the task begins. Do not do this. Return the mind to the present duty. The present is the only place where reason can act. The future is not yours yet. The past is gone. Only this moment is alive with choice. There is discipline in refusing to dwell on imagined catastrophe. There is strength in declining to rehearse the worst case, as if rehearsal were wisdom. If a hardship comes, meet it then. If a loss comes, bear it then. If pain comes, endure it then. But do not bleed in advance for a wound that may never be delivered. A mind that continually suffers before suffering has become addicted to fear. Break that habit. Speak to yourself with firmness. Enough. This is only an image. This is only a thought. This is not yet reality. I will meet what is real when it appears. You will find that fear often loses power when exposed to light. Say the feared thing aloud in plain language. Strip it of decoration. Then ask whether it truly destroys your ability to act well. A difficult meeting may feel heavy. It does not remove your capacity for honesty. A possible rejection may sting. It does not remove your capacity for dignity. A financial setback may unsettle you. It does not remove your capacity for restraint, labor, and intelligent response. The fearful mind exaggerates the size of the blow and minimizes the size of the soul. Reason corrects both mistakes. Your body will sometimes react before your mind has settled. The pulse may rise, the breath may shorten, the hands may tense. Do not be alarmed by this. The body is not your ruler. It is a part of your nature that can be trained. When the first surge comes, slow your breathing. Let the body learn from your steady attention that it need not panic merely because it has been startled. The body follows the mind more than the mind likes to admit. If you remain calm in judgment, the body often follows. Each day offers small places to practice this discipline. Answer the message that makes you uneasy without letting the unease decide your tone. Begin the task you have delayed without waiting for perfect confidence. Walk into the uncertain conversation with calm speech. Refuse the impulse to escape into noise and distraction when you feel exposed. These are not little acts. They are battles for sovereignty. The one who wins over himself in small things will not be easily conquered in larger ones. You may notice that fear often hides behind concern for reputation. You worry about being judged. You worry about making a mistake in public. You worry that others will see weakness. But why should the eyes of others be the measure of your soul? Their opinions are unstable. Their memory is short. Their judgments are often careless. If you shape your life around their gaze, then you have handed your center away. Let them watch. Let them speak. Let them misunderstand. Your task is not to be perfectly admired. Your task is to be inwardly upright. The same is true in relationships. Fear makes people cling, lie, lash out, or withdraw. It tells them they must secure another person's behavior before they can feel safe. This is a trap. You cannot govern another soul. You can only govern your own conduct within the relationship. Be honest. Be fair. Be patient. Do not demand from others the power you have not been given over them. When fear tempts you to manipulate, remember that manipulation is only fear trying to wear the costume of control. Reject it. Speak and act with integrity instead. At the end of the day, return again to examination. Where did fear lead you today? Where did it make you hesitate without cause? Where did it shape your words? Where did it distort your view of another person? Where did it make you imagine harm where none existed? Do not cover these places with excuses. See them clearly, then correct them. The soul improves through scrutiny. Ignored fear grows stronger. Examined fear begins to lose its grip. You need not wait until confidence arrives to act rightly. Confidence often comes after obedience to reason, not before it. The first step is not to feel fearless. The first step is to refuse surrender. The second is to do what virtue requires while the mind still trembles. Then, by repeated practice, the trembling loses its command. This is how courage is built, not by declaring yourself brave, but by acting rightly in the presence of fear until your judgments become steadier than your alarms. Remember that life is brief. Fear steals from it twice. First, by making you suffer in advance. Second, by making you neglect the good that could have been done. A fearful person does not merely feel more pain. He often lives less fully. He postpones, avoids, and shrinks until opportunity passes. Do not let your days be consumed by imagined disasters. Use them, meet them, shape yourself through them. The world will continue to present what is uncertain. You must continue to present a mind that is disciplined enough to stand before uncertainty without bowing. When a fearful thought rises again, do not panic at its return. Recognize the pattern. It is only an appearance seeking admission. You are not required to admit it. Thank reason for its presence. Ask what belongs to you. Ask what does not. Return to the present act. Return to your duty. Return to the steadiness that is available to every soul willing to practice it. Fear may call loudly. Let reason answer calmly. That is how an undisciplined mind becomes a governed one. That is how a person stops being driven by alarm and begins living by choice. That is how the soul learns that it can face what comes without betraying itself. Number 4. Govern your desires through reason instead of passing emotions. There is a quiet force that directs nearly every choice you make, yet most people never stop long enough to examine it. It does not always appear as hunger or ambition. Sometimes it hides behind comfort. Sometimes it disguises itself as excitement. Sometimes it calls itself love, success, security, or reward. It whispers that happiness waits just beyond the next possession, the next victory, the next pleasure, the next approval. It convinces you that one more achievement will finally quiet the restlessness within. Yet, if you observe your own life honestly, you will discover that every satisfied desire quickly makes room for another. The mind that has never learned to govern desire remains permanently occupied chasing what constantly moves beyond its reach. This is not because desire itself is your enemy. The danger begins when desire is allowed to choose your direction without first standing before reason. A passing emotion knows only what feels pleasant in the present moment. It cannot judge whether today's pleasure becomes tomorrow's weakness. It cannot distinguish between what merely attracts you and what actually improves your character. Left unexamined, desire becomes a blind guide. It leads with confidence but without wisdom. It promises satisfaction while quietly increasing dependence upon things that were never meant to rule your peace. Look closely at your ordinary day. How many of your decisions are chosen deliberately, and how many are simply responses to whatever feeling happens to arrive? You wake without purpose and immediately reach for distraction. You grow uncomfortable for a moment and search for entertainment. You become impatient and allow irritation to shape your speech. You feel lonely and seek attention before examining your own conduct. You feel discouraged and abandon work that still deserves your effort. None of these choices appear dramatic, yet together they form the habits that slowly shape an entire life. An undisciplined person rarely notices when desire begins taking command because the process feels natural. Every impulse arrives with urgency, every craving claims importance, every emotional preference insists that immediate satisfaction is necessary. The mind begins confusing intensity with truth. Strong wanting becomes mistaken for genuine need. Before long, life becomes governed by reactions instead of principles. The soul loses its proper ruler and begins following whatever feeling speaks the loudest. Reason asks a different question before permitting any desire to become action. It asks whether the object being pursued contributes to virtue or merely offers temporary pleasure. This question is uncomfortable because it exposes motives that often remain hidden. Many pursuits that appear respectable lose their appeal once examined honestly. Recognition may actually be vanity seeking admiration. Wealth may become an attempt to silence insecurity. Endless activity may conceal fear of sitting quietly with oneself. Even kindness can sometimes hide a desire for approval rather than genuine justice. Without examination, desire easily disguises itself as virtue. You must become willing to disappoint your impulses in order to remain faithful to your highest purpose. This is one of the hardest disciplines because the emotions speak immediately, while reason often speaks quietly. The impatient part of your mind demands relief now. Reason asks you to consider consequences. Pride demands recognition today. Reason reminds you that dignity does not depend upon applause. Comfort urges you toward ease. Reason points toward the effort that strengthens character. If you consistently obey the louder voice, your life will gradually belong to emotion. If you patiently follow the quieter voice, your life will increasingly belong to wisdom. The greatest mistake is believing that freedom means satisfying every desire without restraint. That path creates dependence rather than liberty. A person who cannot refuse himself becomes vulnerable to every temptation that promises pleasure. His peace depends upon constant fulfillment. His confidence depends upon favorable circumstances. His stability depends upon the cooperation of the world around him. Such a person appears free because no one visibly restrains him, yet he remains imprisoned by his own appetites. True freedom begins the moment you discover that you can experience desire without immediately obeying it. There is remarkable strength in allowing an impulse to exist without granting it authority. The feeling arrives. You acknowledge its presence. Then you calmly examine it before acting. This brief space between wanting and choosing is where self-government begins. The untrained mind rushes across this distance without noticing it exists. The disciplined mind lives within it. Each morning, before beginning your responsibilities, prepare yourself for this inner work. Do not merely plan your schedule, prepare your judgment. Remind yourself that countless desires will seek your attention throughout the day. Some will invite comfort at the expense of discipline. Others will promise pleasure while weakening integrity. Others will encourage resentment, because resentment briefly satisfies wounded pride. Decide before these moments arrive that no desire will become action until reason has examined it carefully. Throughout the day, make a habit of asking one simple question whenever a strong impulse appears. If I follow this desire, will I become more just, more disciplined, more courageous, or more truthful? If the answer is uncertain, delay action. Time often reveals what emotion attempts to hide. Many desires lose their urgency when denied immediate obedience. What appeared essential a few moments earlier often proves remarkably unimportant once examined with a calmer mind. Notice especially how desire exaggerates necessity. It tells you that you must answer every insult. It insists that you must defend your image immediately. It claims you must possess what another person owns. It persuades you that happiness cannot exist until certain conditions are met. Yet life repeatedly demonstrates otherwise. Many people possess everything they once desired and remain restless because desire itself has never been disciplined. Others possess comparatively little, yet remain steady because they have learned that contentment grows from governing the self rather than accumulating objects. Your attention deserves careful protection because desire constantly competes for it. Every unnecessary comparison encourages dissatisfaction. Every endless pursuit of novelty weakens appreciation for present duties. Every habit of seeking constant stimulation gradually erodes the ability to remain peacefully with your own thoughts. A mind unable to rest quietly becomes increasingly dependent upon external excitement. Then silence begins feeling uncomfortable because it exposes the disorder that constant distraction has concealed. Learn to welcome moments when nothing demands immediate pleasure. Sit quietly without reaching for entertainment. Walk without filling every silence. Perform ordinary tasks without demanding continuous excitement. These simple exercises reveal how restless desire has become. They also strengthen your capacity to remain governed by reason instead of constant stimulation. A peaceful mind does not require endless distraction because it has learned to enjoy the company of its own disciplined judgment. Your relationships also reveal whether desire has remained within proper limits. Ask yourself whether you seek others primarily to practice justice and goodwill or to satisfy emotional dependence. When affection becomes possession, fear soon follows. When another person becomes responsible for your inner stability, disappointment becomes inevitable. Care deeply for others, fulfill your responsibilities faithfully, offer kindness generously, yet never require another soul to provide what only disciplined character can create within you. Likewise, examine your ambitions honestly. There is nothing improper about working diligently or pursuing worthwhile goals. The danger arises when achievement becomes confused with personal worth. Once identity depends upon success, every setback feels like destruction. Every delay becomes unbearable. Every competitor becomes a threat. Reason reminds you that your value rests not in outcomes, but in the quality of your conduct while pursuing them. Work with excellence because excellence expresses virtue, not because success guarantees happiness. There will be moments when desire and reason seem evenly matched. Part of you will know the proper course while another part resists it. During these moments, do not negotiate endlessly with yourself. Once reason has judged clearly, act. Delay strengthens temptation. Repeated hesitation gives emotion opportunities to construct convincing excuses. Firm action weakens unnecessary desire because it teaches the mind that feelings do not possess final authority. You will sometimes deny yourself pleasures that are not inherently wrong simply to strengthen your command over your own impulses. Choose simplicity when luxury is available. Leave some comfort behind voluntarily. Eat with moderation even when abundance surrounds you. Complete difficult responsibilities before seeking amusement. These practices are not punishments. They are exercises reminding your mind that happiness depends upon character rather than constant gratification. By occasionally refusing what is pleasant, you prepare yourself to remain steady when life refuses it without your permission. Observe how often regret follows actions chosen by emotion alone. Harsh words spoken during anger remain after anger disappears. Wasteful habits formed through comfort continue long after pleasure fades. Opportunities neglected because of temporary discouragement cannot always be recovered. Emotion promises immediate satisfaction while hiding future cost. Reason considers both present and future together. It refuses to sacrifice lasting integrity for momentary relief. When disappointment visits your life, Desire often attempts to compensate by searching for immediate escape. It urges excessive distraction, unnecessary consumption, endless complaint, or self-pity. Resist this pattern. Difficulty does not justify abandoning discipline. In fact, hardship reveals whether discipline has truly become part of your character. The person governed by reason remains measured during both success and adversity because principles do not change with circumstances. As evening approaches, examine your day carefully. Ask where desire quietly influenced your decisions without permission. Notice moments when you spoke simply to receive approval. Notice where comfort prevented necessary effort. Notice where impatience interrupted thoughtful judgment. Notice where comparison disturbed contentment. Record these observations honestly within your own mind. Self-examination loses its value the moment excuses replace truth. Do not condemn yourself when weaknesses become visible. Honest recognition is the beginning of improvement, not evidence of failure. Every unnoticed habit continues directing your conduct without challenge. Every habit brought into clear awareness becomes available for correction. The disciplined person does not pretend perfection. He simply refuses to protect his own illusions. Gradually, you will discover that many desires once considered irresistible lose their influence through repeated examination. They become smaller because they no longer receive unquestioning obedience. You begin recognizing them as passing visitors rather than permanent rulers. Some remain for only a few moments before disappearing entirely. Others return frequently but find the door closed each time. Every refusal strengthens your ability to choose wisely during the next encounter. Do not expect the emotional part of your nature to disappear completely. Human beings naturally experience attraction, preference, excitement, disappointment, and longing. The purpose of discipline is not to erase these experiences, but to assign them their proper place. Emotion may advise, it must never govern. Reason alone possesses the steadiness required to direct an honorable life through changing circumstances. There is profound peace in wanting only what agrees with virtue. Such a person no longer depends upon constant success, endless praise, or uninterrupted comfort. He appreciates favorable circumstances without becoming attached to them. He accepts difficulties without believing they have stolen his happiness. His desires remain moderate because they have been educated by wisdom rather than excitement. He enjoys what arrives without becoming enslaved by it. He releases what departs without surrendering his character. Many people spend their entire lives attempting to satisfy every appetite while neglecting the one desire worthy of complete devotion, the desire to become a person of sound judgment and unwavering integrity. Every other pursuit gains proper direction once this desire stands first. Wealth becomes a tool rather than an obsession. Relationships become opportunities for justice rather than dependence. Success becomes a responsibility rather than an identity. Comfort becomes something appreciated rather than demanded. From this day forward, refuse to let passing emotions write the laws by which you live. Welcome each desire as an opportunity for examination rather than automatic obedience. Let every strong impulse stand before the quiet authority of reason. Ask whether it serves your highest purpose or merely seeks temporary satisfaction. Choose only what strengthens character, deepens self-command, and aligns your conduct with virtue. In doing so, you will slowly discover a freedom that no pleasure can provide and no disappointment can destroy, because your life will no longer be directed by changing feelings, but by the enduring guidance of disciplined reason. Number 5. End every needless complaint and strengthen your willing character. Listen carefully to the words that leave your mouth each day, because they reveal the condition of your mind long before your actions do. A person rarely becomes weak through one great failure, More often, weakness grows quietly through hundreds of small complaints that are repeated until they become a habit. The complaint may seem harmless. It may concern the weather, another person's behavior, an unexpected delay, an inconvenience at work, an aching body, or a plan that unfolded differently than expected. Yet every unnecessary complaint carries the same hidden message. It declares that your peace depends upon circumstances behaving according to your wishes. The moment you accept this belief, you surrender the authority that rightly belongs to your own reason. Many people believe complaining relieves suffering because it allows frustration to escape. In truth, needless complaint strengthens the very state of mind it pretends to release. Every repeated grievance teaches the mind to search for fresh reasons to remain dissatisfied. Attention gradually becomes trained to notice every inconvenience while overlooking every opportunity for virtue. The world itself has not become heavier. The habit of interpretation has changed. You begin waking each morning prepared to discover what is wrong, instead of asking what is required of your character. Observe yourself honestly during ordinary moments. You are waiting longer than expected. A task becomes more difficult than planned. Someone forgets a promise. A machine stops working. Traffic slows your journey. None of these events contains bitterness within itself. Bitterness enters only when judgment declares that reality has violated your personal expectations. Before that judgment, there is only an event. After that judgment, unnecessary suffering begins. Learn to recognize this difference because your freedom depends upon it. The disciplined mind never asks whether life has become perfectly convenient. It asks whether the present situation offers another opportunity to practice wisdom, justice, courage, or self-restraint. Every circumstance presents such an opportunity if you are willing to look beyond immediate discomfort. Delay teaches patience. Confusion demands careful thinking. Criticism invites humility. Fatigue strengthens perseverance. Loss reveals attachment. Difficulty uncovers hidden weaknesses that comfort would have allowed to remain concealed. When viewed through reason, obstacles stop appearing as enemies and begin serving as instructors. Complaining often disguises itself as honesty. You may tell yourself that you are merely describing reality exactly as it is. Examine this belief carefully. Honest description seeks understanding. Complaint seeks emotional agreement. Honest description prepares the mind for intelligent action. Complaint persuades the mind that frustration itself is a meaningful response. One strengthens judgment, the other weakens it. Learn to distinguish between speaking truthfully about difficulty and feeding unnecessary resentment toward it. There is another danger hidden within habitual complaint. It quietly convinces you that responsibility belongs somewhere else. Every grievance places attention outside yourself. Your thoughts become occupied with unfair people, unfortunate events, difficult conditions, disappointing outcomes, and inconvenient circumstances. Meanwhile, the one place where genuine improvement remains possible receives little attention. Your own judgment becomes neglected because your mind has become occupied examining everyone except yourself. This is why complaint delays growth. It directs the eye away from the only territory where discipline can actually produce change. Ask yourself a difficult question whenever dissatisfaction begins rising within you. Does this complaint improve my character in any way? Does speaking these words make me wiser? Does repeating this frustration increase my patience, justice, honesty, or courage? Most complaints cannot survive such examination because they offer no genuine benefit. They merely repeat resistance against reality without contributing anything useful to your conduct. Once you recognize this pattern, silence becomes stronger than unnecessary expression. Do not misunderstand this discipline. Refusing needless complaint does not require pretending that pain is pleasant or that injustice should be ignored. A disciplined person acknowledges hardship clearly. He recognizes genuine suffering without exaggeration. When action can improve a situation, he acts. When honest speech is required, he speaks. When correction becomes necessary, he corrects. The difference lies in motive. His words are guided by reason seeking improvement rather than emotion seeking sympathy. His speech serves virtue rather than irritation. Many people become attached to complaining because it creates the temporary feeling of companionship. Shared dissatisfaction often appears easier than shared responsibility. Entire conversations pass without anyone examining himself because everyone prefers discussing the faults of circumstances instead. Yet no lasting strength emerges from mutual resentment. Character grows where responsibility begins. The moment you stop asking who should have behaved differently and begin asking how you should respond more wisely, your inner life changes direction. Strength of character depends upon willingness. This willingness is not excitement, it is not enthusiasm that appears only when conditions are favorable. It is the quiet decision to cooperate with reason, regardless of emotional preference. The willing character performs necessary duties whether comfort accompanies them or not. It fulfills responsibilities without demanding constant encouragement. It continues honorable action even when recognition never arrives. Such willingness cannot be purchased, borrowed, or inherited. It must be cultivated through repeated choices made in ordinary life. Begin each morning by preparing your willingness before preparing your plans. Say quietly to yourself that the day owes you nothing beyond opportunities to practice virtue. Remind yourself that interruptions will appear, people will sometimes disappoint you, mistakes will occur, and unexpected events will require adaptation. Welcome this knowledge rather than resisting it. The prepared mind loses far less energy protesting reality because it understands that uncertainty belongs naturally to human life. As the day unfolds, pay close attention to your first impulse whenever inconvenience appears. Before speaking, pause long enough to examine the judgment forming within you. Ask whether your frustration arises because something truly threatens your character or because reality simply refused to satisfy your preference. This question alone will prevent countless unnecessary complaints. You will gradually notice that many irritations disappear once examined honestly. They were never worthy of your peace. The willing character accepts responsibility without bargaining. It does not ask whether the task feels pleasant before beginning. It does not calculate whether recognition will follow faithful effort. It understands that duty possesses value independent of reward. Many people waste precious years waiting to feel motivated before acting responsibly. Motivation rises and falls with changing emotions. Reason remains available every day. Build your life upon what remains steady rather than what changes continually. There will be moments when your body feels tired and your mind searches for excuses. During these moments, complaint often appears first. It suggests that today's burden is unusually unfair. It insists that your situation deserves special exemption. Listen carefully because this is the moment where character either weakens or strengthens. If reason confirms that your responsibility remains possible, continue your work calmly. Each completed duty, despite reluctance, expands your willingness. Every surrendered excuse narrows the influence of self-indulgence. Notice how unnecessary complaint affects your relationships. Constant dissatisfaction slowly burdens everyone around you. People begin encountering your frustrations before they encounter your character. Conversations become centered upon problems instead of principles. Gratitude disappears because attention remains fixed upon what is missing. This habit does not merely influence your own peace, it shapes the atmosphere surrounding your family, friends, and colleagues. A disciplined person understands that governing his own speech serves others as well as himself. Replace habitual complaint with careful observation. Instead of declaring that everything has gone wrong, identify the specific fact before you. Instead of saying nothing ever works, ask what action remains available. Instead of dwelling upon another person's fault, examine whether your own conduct has remained just. This change appears small, yet it transforms the entire direction of thought. Observation invites intelligent response. Complaint invites emotional repetition. The willing character also refuses to complain about duties freely accepted. If you have chosen a responsibility, carry it with dignity. Every meaningful commitment includes inconvenience. Every worthwhile relationship demands patience. Every honorable profession requires effort. Every valuable goal asks for sacrifice. Complaining continually about the cost of chosen responsibilities reveals that desire sought reward without accepting obligation. Mature judgment understands that responsibility and difficulty naturally travel together. There is remarkable freedom in accepting ordinary discomfort without constant resistance. Hunger before a meal, fatigue after honest labor, criticism following difficult decisions, uncertainty before important events, these experiences belong to human existence. They need not become personal insults. The more peacefully you receive unavoidable discomfort, the less authority it possesses over your decisions. Your mind stops treating every challenge as evidence that something has gone terribly wrong. Instead, difficulty becomes another occasion to practice steadiness. Each evening, examine your speech with complete honesty. Recall the moments when complaint escaped your lips. Ask what judgment produced those words. Did you secretly believe the world owed you greater comfort? Did pride expect special treatment? Did impatience reject necessary delays? Did attachment demand guaranteed success? Every complaint reveals an underlying belief. Correct the belief, and the habit gradually loses its foundation. Likewise, notice the occasions when you remain silent without suppressing truth. Remember situations where you accepted inconvenience calmly, fulfilled your responsibility without resentment, or redirected your attention toward useful action instead of emotional protest. These moments deserve careful recognition because they reveal genuine progress. Character grows through repeated victories that often appear insignificant to everyone except the one practicing them. Do not imagine that strengthening your willingness requires extraordinary circumstances. The greatest opportunities are already present. Rising promptly when comfort urges delay, speaking kindly while irritation seeks expression, completing necessary work despite boredom, listening patiently during disagreement, accepting correction without immediate defense. These ordinary acts shape the soul more reliably than occasional dramatic achievements. Great strength develops from faithful discipline practiced when no audience is watching. There will still be days when discouragement visits you. You may encounter disappointment, exhaustion, or unexpected loss. During such times, remember that willingness does not mean pretending to enjoy suffering. It means refusing to let suffering determine your principles. You remain capable of honesty while grieving. You remain capable of justice while frustrated. You remain capable of discipline while tired. Your emotional condition may change throughout the day, yet your commitment to virtue need not change with it. Guard yourself against the subtle temptation to believe that complaining proves sincerity. Genuine sincerity appears through truthful action, not repeated dissatisfaction. The strongest person in the room is often the one who quietly accepts responsibility while others search for someone to blame. Such strength rarely attracts immediate attention because it avoids unnecessary display. Yet it steadily transforms the person who practices it. Peace grows where complaint once lived. Clarity replaces resentment. Purpose replaces frustration. As this discipline becomes part of your daily life, you will notice a remarkable change. The world itself remains uncertain. People continue behaving imperfectly. Plans still encounter obstacles. Fortune continues changing without warning. Yet your inner condition becomes increasingly stable because it no longer depends upon perfect circumstances. Your willingness begins replacing resistance. Your attention returns consistently to what belongs within your own authority. Every challenge becomes another invitation to exercise reason instead of reaction. From this day forward, become careful with every complaint before allowing it to leave your mind or your lips. Examine whether it serves wisdom or merely strengthens dissatisfaction. Refuse to grant unnecessary frustration a permanent place within your thinking. Meet each inconvenience with disciplined judgment rather than habitual resistance. Strengthen your willing character through quiet acceptance of rightful duty, steady commitment to honorable action, and unwavering devotion to reason above emotion. In doing so, you will discover that much of the suffering you once believed was imposed by the world was actually sustained by habits you now possess the power to leave behind. Number 6. Examine every reaction until virtue directs your next choice. Your life is not shaped only by the great decisions that arrive a few times each year. It is shaped far more by the countless reactions that pass through your mind every single day. One careless reply can weaken trust. One unexamined assumption can create resentment. One impatient moment can undo hours of careful effort. Most people believe their character is revealed only during extraordinary events, yet character is quietly formed during ordinary reactions that no one else notices. Every response becomes another stone placed into the foundation of the person you are becoming. If those stones are laid without examination, your life will eventually stand upon judgments you never consciously chose. The greatest danger is not that you experience anger, disappointment, excitement, or fear. The danger begins when these reactions become your commander instead of your visitor. A reaction is only the first movement within the mind. It is not yet your decision. It is not yet your character. It is only an invitation asking whether you will surrender your judgment or preserve it. Many people never recognize this difference. They believe that because they feel something strongly, they must immediately act upon it. They mistake intensity for necessity. They mistake impulse for truth. In doing so, they gradually lose command over themselves while believing they are simply being authentic. Consider how quickly the mind attempts to explain every event before understanding it. Someone fails to greet you warmly, and the mind immediately invents disrespect. A plan changes unexpectedly, and the mind declares the entire day ruined. A mistake appears, and the mind begins announcing failure before the lesson has even been discovered. These instant conclusions feel convincing because they arise so quickly. Speed, however, has never been proof of wisdom. The fastest judgment is often the least reliable because it has not yet stood before reason. This is why examination must become your constant companion. Every reaction deserves questioning before it receives your agreement. Do not ask whether your first response feels natural. Ask whether it deserves to become your next action. These are entirely different questions. Nature has given you the capacity to pause before choosing. Use that gift carefully. Within that brief moment of examination lives the difference between slavery to emotion and mastery through reason. Begin your mornings with a simple commitment rather than a wish for pleasant circumstances. Tell yourself that many impressions will seek permission to govern your conduct before the day ends. Some will arrive wearing the face of irritation. Others will promise immediate satisfaction through impatience, pride, or self-defense. Resolve before leaving your home that none of these impressions will receive unquestioned authority. They may appear. They may speak loudly, they may demand immediate action, yet they will not become your guide until reason has carefully examined them. Throughout the day, notice how often reactions attempt to hurry you. They insist that immediate speech is necessary. They urge instant judgment before sufficient understanding exists. They persuade you that delaying your response shows weakness. This urgency is one of the clearest signs that examination is required. Reason rarely shouts. It rarely demands haste. It prefers clarity over speed because it understands that words cannot easily be recalled once spoken and actions cannot easily be undone once completed. Imagine someone speaks harshly to you without justification. The undisciplined mind instantly prepares its defense. Pride seeks equal retaliation. Anger gathers evidence. Memory searches for old grievances to strengthen the coming argument. Before long, two wounded minds compete to inflict greater injury. Nothing useful emerges because neither person examined the first reaction before allowing it to become speech. A disciplined person chooses differently. He first asks whether another person's anger requires him to abandon his own principles. The answer is always the same. Another person's lack of discipline never excuses your own. This does not mean remaining silent when truth requires honest expression. It means refusing to allow emotional disturbance to determine the manner of your response. You may still correct injustice. You may still defend what is right. You may still establish proper boundaries. Yet every action proceeds from deliberate judgment rather than wounded impulse. Such conduct possesses quiet strength because it serves virtue instead of revenge. The same examination belongs in moments of praise. Many people guard themselves against anger while leaving themselves completely vulnerable to admiration. Praise can become just as dangerous as criticism when accepted without reflection. The desire to preserve approval slowly changes behavior. You begin speaking what earns applause instead of what serves truth. You avoid necessary correction because you fear losing affection. Gradually, your choices become directed by the opinions of others rather than by reason. Examine pleasant reactions as carefully as painful ones. Ask whether approval is improving your character or merely feeding your vanity. Notice how reactions influence your relationships long before words are spoken. Suspicion changes your tone. Impatience changes your attention. Pride changes your willingness to listen. Envy changes your ability to celebrate another person's success. None of these conditions appear suddenly. They begin quietly inside the mind where reactions are accepted without examination. If you wish to improve your relationships, begin by governing the hidden judgments that prepare your outward behavior. Many people search endlessly for techniques that promise immediate emotional control. Yet no method succeeds if examination itself is neglected. You cannot master what you refuse to observe. Become a careful student of your own mind. Watch the thoughts that repeatedly appear under similar circumstances. Notice which situations consistently awaken defensiveness, discouragement, arrogance, or resentment. These recurring reactions reveal unfinished work within your character. Do not resent discovering them. Welcome the discovery because hidden weaknesses cannot be strengthened until they become visible. Each difficult encounter provides an opportunity for honest instruction. Instead of asking why another person behaved poorly, ask what your own reaction revealed about you. Did criticism expose pride? Did delay expose impatience? Did uncertainty expose dependence upon control? Did success expose vanity? Every circumstance becomes a mirror reflecting parts of your character that ordinary comfort leaves unnoticed. If you reject these lessons because they arrive through unpleasant experiences, you reject some of life's greatest opportunities for improvement. Train yourself to separate the event from the interpretation forming inside your mind. An event simply occurs. Interpretation assigns meaning. The event belongs to the world. The interpretation belongs to you. Since it belongs to you, it deserves careful examination. Do not rush to call every inconvenience an injustice or every disappointment a disaster. Such exaggerated judgments create unnecessary suffering while obscuring reasonable action. Speak to yourself with precision. Name events honestly without enlarging them through emotional exaggeration. There will be moments when your emotions seem overwhelming. During such times, reduce your attention to the next honorable action rather than attempting to solve every imagined problem at once. Ask yourself what justice requires during this single conversation. Ask what patience requires during this particular delay. Ask what honesty requires within this decision. The mind often becomes exhausted because it attempts to govern an entire future while neglecting the single choice presently before it. Virtue always begins with the next action available. When uncertainty surrounds you, reactions often search desperately for guarantees. They demand certainty before effort. They insist upon complete confidence before responsibility. Yet certainty has never been placed under your authority. Your task is not to eliminate every unknown. Your task is to act reasonably despite what remains unknown. Waiting for perfect assurance before moving forward often becomes another form of avoidance disguised as careful thinking. Examination should produce clearer judgment, not endless hesitation. Practice responding slowly in situations where your habits urge speed. Delay your first reply during disagreement. Listen fully before preparing your answer. Allow silence to perform its work before filling it with unnecessary words. These simple disciplines strengthen self-command because they remind your mind that reactions need not become immediate behavior. You possess the ability to choose your response rather than merely expressing your first impression. Your speech deserves particular attention because spoken words reveal whether examination has truly occurred. Before speaking, ask whether your words serve truth, justice, and necessity. Many conversations become longer while growing less meaningful because reactions continue speaking after reason has already fallen silent. Learn to value restraint as much as expression. The disciplined person does not measure wisdom by the number of words spoken, but by the quality of judgment behind them. Another valuable practice is refusing to judge your entire life according to one difficult moment. Reactions often exaggerate temporary experiences into permanent conclusions. One failure becomes proof of lifelong inadequacy. One disappointment becomes evidence that hope itself was mistaken. One criticism becomes confirmation that your efforts possess no value. These conclusions reveal impatience rather than wisdom. Character develops across countless choices made faithfully over time. No single event possesses authority to define the whole of your life unless you willingly grant it such power. Every evening offers an opportunity to continue the work begun during the day. Sit quietly and revisit your reactions without defending them. Ask where impatience interrupted reason. Ask where pride demanded unnecessary recognition. Ask where fear quietly influenced decisions. Ask where generosity yielded to self-interest. This examination should remain honest but never cruel. The purpose is correction rather than self-condemnation. Harsh judgment toward yourself often becomes another emotional reaction requiring examination. When you identify a mistake, do not merely regret it. Understand it. Discover which judgment permitted it. Every action grows from some prior belief accepted by the mind. Correct the belief and future conduct gradually changes. Leave the belief untouched, and the same mistake returns wearing different circumstances. Lasting improvement never comes from managing appearances alone. It begins by transforming the judgments that quietly direct behavior. You will discover over time that examined reactions become weaker, while examined principles become stronger. Situations that once disturbed you deeply begin losing their influence because your attention no longer belongs entirely to emotion. You begin noticing greater space between impression and action. Within that space, reason gradually assumes the place emotion once occupied. This transformation appears slowly, often unnoticed from one day to the next. Yet months later you recognize that circumstances once capable of controlling your peace now receive only thoughtful attention before calm action follows. Never assume that progress eliminates the need for continued examination. Pride often enters quietly after visible improvement. The mind begins believing it has already become disciplined enough to trust every reaction again. This confidence invites old habits to return unnoticed. Remain a lifelong student of your own conduct. Continue examining every response regardless of previous success. Humility protects wisdom by reminding you that vigilance must continue as long as life itself continues. There will always be people who provoke, disappoint, misunderstand, criticize, or oppose you. There will always be events that arrive unexpectedly. There will always be moments when circumstances fail to cooperate with your preferences. These realities cannot be removed from human existence. Your freedom has never depended upon their disappearance. It depends upon your ability to examine what rises within you before allowing it to shape what follows. As your practice deepens, you will begin noticing a remarkable change. Your peace no longer depends upon favorable treatment. Your relationships become steadier because they are guided by deliberate judgment instead of changing emotion. Your work becomes more consistent because passing moods lose their authority over effort. Your decisions become clearer because reason has learned to lead where impulse once ruled. The world around you may remain uncertain, yet your inner life gradually acquires stability that circumstances cannot easily disturb. From this day forward, refuse to let any reaction become your master simply because it arrived first. Welcome every impression with calm attention rather than immediate agreement. Place every emotional response before the quiet authority of reason. Ask whether your next choice reflects justice, courage, self-restraint, and wisdom before allowing yourself to act. Continue this practice faithfully until virtue directs your conduct more naturally than impulse ever did. Then your character will no longer be shaped by whatever happens around you, but by the deliberate choices made within you, where genuine freedom has always waited for your attention. Number 7. Endure every hardship with calm discipline and steady purpose. There are days when life seems determined to test every promise you have made to yourself. Your plans fail without warning. Your efforts produce little reward. People misunderstand your intentions. Your body grows tired while your responsibilities continue to demand your attention. In these moments, the question is never whether hardship exists. The question is whether hardship will govern your character or merely challenge it. Every person meets difficulty. Few examine what difficulty reveals about the condition of their own mind. The greatest mistake is believing that a peaceful life is one in which suffering never appears. Such an expectation places your peace in the hands of fortune. The world has never promised uninterrupted comfort, and no amount of wishing can persuade reality to obey your preferences. If your happiness depends upon events unfolding exactly as you desire, your stability will always remain fragile. A single disappointment will have the power to shake your confidence because your peace was built upon conditions that never belonged to your authority. Look carefully at what usually happens when hardship arrives. The mind immediately begins arguing with reality. It asks why this happened now. It insists that life should have been easier after so much effort. It compares the present burden with the imagined ease enjoyed by others. It searches for someone to blame or some circumstance to condemn. While this inner argument continues, nothing improves. The difficulty remains exactly where it was, but now another burden has been added. The original challenge is joined by unnecessary resistance. Hardship itself does not possess the power to corrupt your character. It only presents the opportunity for corruption. What determines the outcome is the judgment you form about the event. If you decide that every obstacle is an injustice, bitterness begins growing within you. If you decide that every delay is unbearable, impatience becomes your constant companion. If you decide that every disappointment proves failure, discouragement soon governs your effort. The event is external, the judgment is your own. It is within that judgment that your freedom either survives or disappears. Calm discipline begins with accepting that some parts of life will never ask for your permission before arriving. Illness may interrupt your plans, loss may visit without warning, others may act carelessly despite your fairness toward them. Circumstances may change overnight. You cannot command these events to obey your wishes, yet you remain responsible for one thing that no hardship can seize without your consent. You remain responsible for the quality of your response. Many people confuse calmness with passivity. They imagine that remaining composed means refusing to act. The disciplined mind understands something very different. Calmness is not the absence of effort. It is the refusal to let emotional turbulence replace thoughtful judgment. A calm person still works, speaks, corrects mistakes, protects what is right, and fulfills responsibilities. The difference is that every action proceeds from deliberate reason instead of panic or resentment. Before the day begins, prepare yourself inwardly instead of merely arranging your schedule. Remind yourself that inconvenience will likely appear before sunset. Someone may test your patience. A responsibility may become heavier than expected. A plan may require revision. Decide in advance that none of these events will persuade you to abandon your principles. Preparation does not remove difficulty. It prevents surprise from becoming disorder. When hardship arrives, resist the temptation to judge the entire day according to a single event. The mind often magnifies one unpleasant moment until it overshadows everything else. A difficult conversation convinces you the whole relationship is broken. One mistake persuades you that your efforts have no value. One setback appears large enough to erase months of faithful work. Such judgments are rarely accurate. They arise from discouragement rather than careful observation. Train yourself to ask a different question whenever circumstances become difficult. Instead of asking why this happened to you, ask what this situation now requires from your character. Does it require patience? Then practice patience. Does it require honesty? Speak honestly. Does it require courage? Take the next rightful step despite uncertainty. Does it require endurance? Continue your duty without resentment. This question immediately returns your attention to the only place where meaningful action remains possible. Steady purpose depends upon remembering that your work is not finished simply because progress has become uncomfortable. Many worthy pursuits include long periods where results remain invisible. Character grows during these unseen seasons. Discipline develops while no one offers praise. Integrity strengthens when shortcuts promise easier rewards. The soul becomes reliable by continuing honorable action after excitement has disappeared. Guard yourself against believing that suffering automatically improves a person. Difficulty alone teaches nothing. Some people become wiser through hardship because they examine themselves honestly. Others become more bitter because they examine only the world around them. Pain provides opportunity. Reflection determines whether that opportunity becomes growth or resentment. There will be moments when you feel exhausted by responsibilities that seem never to end. During those moments, reduce your attention to the next duty rather than the entire distance ahead. Complete the conversation before worrying about tomorrow's challenge. Finish today's work before imagining next month's burden. The mind often creates unnecessary weight by attempting to carry future responsibilities before they exist. Practice voluntary simplicity from time to time. Accept small discomforts without complaint. Walk when convenience invites idleness. Eat with moderation when excess is available. Complete demanding work before seeking entertainment. These small exercises remind you that comfort is pleasant but never necessary for living well. They strengthen your willingness to remain steady when life presents discomfort without your choosing. Hardship also reveals where attachment has quietly taken root. Notice what disturbs you most deeply. If delayed success destroys your peace, examine your attachment to achievement. If criticism unsettles your judgment, examine your dependence upon approval. If uncertainty overwhelms you, examine your desire to control what has never belonged to your authority. Every disturbance points towards something the mind has valued beyond reason. Throughout the day, pause whenever emotional strain begins increasing. Breathe slowly, separate facts from assumptions, identify what remains within your power, then direct your effort toward that single area without wasting energy resisting everything beyond your reach. This practice will not eliminate every burden, but it will prevent your own imagination from multiplying it. As evening approaches, examine yourself with honesty rather than harshness. Ask where you remained faithful to reason despite difficulty. Notice where impatience interrupted discipline. Recall moments when discouragement tempted you to abandon responsibility. Do not hide these failures behind excuses, yet do not allow them to become reasons for surrender. Every honest examination prepares tomorrow's improvement. Over time, you will notice that hardships which once seemed unbearable begin losing their power, not because life has become easier, but because your character has become steadier. Your attention no longer races toward complaint. Your mind no longer demands perfect conditions before acting well. Your purpose remains fixed, even while circumstances continue changing around you. Remember that every difficult day eventually passes, but the habits formed while enduring it remain. If you meet hardship with resentment, resentment becomes easier tomorrow. If you meet hardship with disciplined judgment becomes more natural with every repetition. Character is shaped through repeated responses long before it is revealed through extraordinary events. From this day forward, stop measuring the quality of your life by the absence of struggle. Measure it by the consistency of your principles while struggle is present. Let every obstacle remind you to return to reason. Let every disappointment become another opportunity to strengthen patience. Let every burden deepen your endurance instead of weakening your resolve. In doing so, you will discover that calm discipline is not a gift granted by favorable circumstances. It is a daily practice built through countless choices to remain governed by virtue when hardship invites you to abandon it. Number 8. Remember death daily and choose virtue without delay. One truth accompanies you from the first day of your life until the last, yet your mind spends extraordinary effort pretending it remains distant. Every plan assumes another morning. Every argument assumes another opportunity for reconciliation. Every delay assumes there will always be enough time to become the person you intended to become. This quiet assumption shapes countless choices without ever being questioned. It encourages postponement. It excuses hesitation. It persuades you that the work of improving your character can safely begin tomorrow. Yet tomorrow has never been promised. Only this moment has been placed within your care. The awareness of death is not an invitation to sadness. It is an invitation to clarity. It strips away illusions that comfort often protects. It asks whether the matters consuming your attention truly deserve the limited portion of life entrusted to you. Many concerns appear enormous only because you imagine unlimited time. Viewed against the certainty that every day is finite, countless worries immediately lose their importance. Petty resentment becomes difficult to defend. Endless comparison appears empty. Delayed virtue becomes impossible to justify. Most people do not waste their lives through dramatic mistakes. They lose them gradually through postponement. They postpone difficult conversations that honesty requires. They postpone forgiveness because pride still demands satisfaction. They postpone discipline until circumstances improve. They postpone gratitude until success arrives. They postpone self-examination because distraction feels easier than truth. Eventually, they discover that delay has become their most practiced habit. Time continued moving while character remained unchanged. Every sunrise should remind you that another portion of your life has already been exchanged for whatever occupied yesterday's attention. Ask yourself whether that exchange honored your highest purpose. Did your thoughts strengthen wisdom or merely feed anxiety? Did your words encourage justice or increase division? Did your actions reflect self-command or surrender to passing emotion? These questions become urgent only when you remember that every day spent cannot be recovered by regret. Do not misunderstand the purpose of remembering death. It is not meant to produce fear. Fear often paralyzes action. This reflection is meant to awaken responsibility. When you remember that your days are limited, your attention naturally returns to what deserves your effort. You begin valuing conduct above reputation. You become less concerned with appearing admirable and more concerned with actually becoming honorable. Time becomes too valuable to waste protecting pride or repeating habits that weaken your character. Each morning, before beginning your work, pause long enough to acknowledge that this day may never return. This is not a prediction, it is a recognition of reality. Let that awareness guide your choices rather than frighten them. Ask yourself how a person who truly understood the value of today would think, speak, and act. Then allow your answer to become the standard by which you conduct the hours ahead. You will notice that many temptations lose their strength under this examination. Petty arguments become unworthy of prolonged attention. The desire for constant approval begins fading because the opinions of others cannot increase the value of a single day. The urge to postpone necessary effort weakens because delay no longer appears harmless. Remembering life's limits changes priorities without requiring dramatic speeches or extraordinary experiences. It quietly rearranges the order of what matters. There is great freedom in understanding that your task is not to control how long you live, but how well you live. Length has never belonged entirely to your authority. Character always has. You cannot guarantee another year, another month, or even another evening. You can decide whether the next conversation reflects honesty. You can decide whether the next decision reflects justice. You can decide whether the next challenge is met with courage or avoidance. These choices remain available regardless of how much time remains. Many people imagine that virtue belongs to some future version of themselves. They believe discipline will become easier after circumstances improve. They promise to become patient once life becomes less demanding. They expect generosity to arrive after greater success. They wait for ideal conditions before practicing honorable conduct. Yet character is never built inside imaginary tomorrows. It is shaped entirely by today's decisions. Every delay strengthens the habit of postponement. Every immediate act of integrity strengthens the habit of virtue. Throughout the day, ask yourself whether your present activity deserves the portion of life you are exchanging for it. Some tasks require your full effort because they fulfill responsibility. Others merely consume attention without enriching character. Learn to distinguish between the two. Time is not measured only by hours passing, but by the quality of the judgments made while those hours unfold. Remember also that every person you meet shares the same human condition. The individual who irritates you will not remain forever. The stranger you overlook possesses limited days just as you do. The family member whose presence you take for granted is traveling the same uncertain path. This awareness encourages patience, fairness, and gratitude. It becomes difficult to waste precious moments nurturing resentment when you understand that both your time and theirs are finite. When disappointment arrives, remember that hardship does not interrupt life. It is part of life. Do not spend your remaining days demanding that existence become free from difficulty before you agree to live well. such a bargain can never be fulfilled. Instead, let each challenge become another opportunity to demonstrate that virtue depends upon judgment rather than circumstance. There will be moments when you fail to act according to your principles. Do not waste those moments through endless self-condemnation. Honest correction is more valuable than prolonged regret. Learn from the mistake immediately. Adjust your judgment. Return to honorable conduct without delay. Life is too brief to remain trapped inside yesterday's failures when today's choices still belong to you. As evening approaches, conduct a careful examination of your day. Ask yourself whether you treated time as something precious or something unlimited. Consider where you spoke carelessly, where you allowed unnecessary distractions to replace meaningful effort, and where you ignored opportunities to strengthen your character. Do not perform this examination to punish yourself. Perform it because tomorrow, if it arrives, deserves a wiser version of the person who lived today. You may discover that your greatest obstacle is not lack of ability but lack of urgency. You know what honesty requires. You understand the value of self-command. You recognize the importance of patience, justice, moderation, and courage. Yet knowledge without immediate practice gradually becomes another form of delay. Wisdom exists only when truth enters conduct. The awareness of mortality also teaches contentment. You become less eager to chase endless possessions because you understand that nothing external accompanies you beyond this life. Wealth may be useful, recognition may be pleasant, comfort may be welcome. None of these possesses the power to replace integrity. When you remember life's limits, possessions naturally return to their proper place as tools rather than masters. Guard yourself against the illusion that youth, health, or present strength guarantees future opportunity. Human life has always been uncertain. Accepting this uncertainty is not weakness, it is maturity. The person who lives with this understanding prepares the mind each morning and examines the soul each evening, because neither practice can safely be postponed. As this discipline becomes part of your life, you will notice a profound change. Your attention becomes less scattered. Your conversations become more sincere. Your responsibilities receive greater care. Small acts of kindness become easier because you stop assuming endless opportunities to express them later. Every ordinary day gains significance because you no longer measure value by excitement, but by faithful conduct. From this moment forward, let the certainty of life's end become a guide rather than a source of fear. Allow it to expose every unnecessary delay. Let it remind you that your character is being shaped now, not someday. Speak truth while you have the chance. Fulfill your responsibilities while strength remains. Practice patience before another opportunity disappears. Choose justice before convenience. Choose self-command before impulse. Choose virtue today, because today is the only portion of life that truly belongs to your judgment, and no person becomes honorable by postponing the work that only the present moment can accomplish. Number 9. Practice self-command until nothing outside disturbs your peace. Most people believe peace is something the world gives or takes away. They imagine that calmness depends on silence around them, approval from others, smooth outcomes, and predictable days. This belief is the first chain around the mind. It hands authority over your inner life to forces that were never designed to serve your stability. If your peace rises and falls with every external event, then you are not governing your life. You are being moved by it. Self-command begins when you recognize a simple but uncomfortable truth. Nothing outside your judgment can reach the core of your character unless you allow it entry through interpretation. Events arrive without moral weight. People act according to their own reasoning. Circumstances unfold according to nature, not preference. What disturbs you is never the event itself, but the judgment you attach to it. That judgment is where your responsibility begins and your training must continue. Observe your daily reactions without hiding from them. A delay appears and irritation rises. A person speaks sharply and your mood shifts instantly. A plan collapses and frustration takes hold before reflection begins. These responses feel automatic, but they are not beyond your control. They are trained habits of interpretation repeated so often that they now appear natural. Anything trained can be retrained, anything learned can be unlearned. The mind is not fixed, it is shaped continuously by what you allow it to practice. The unexamined mind believes every impression deserves immediate reaction. It confuses motion with necessity. It assumes urgency in every disturbance, yet urgency is often nothing more than emotional pressure disguised as importance. If every event demands instant reaction, then your life becomes a series of reflexes instead of deliberate choices. Self-command is the refusal to live at that speed. It is the willingness to pause before responding, to examine before agreeing, and to choose before acting. Begin your mornings with preparation rather than expectation. Do not assume the day will serve your preferences. Assume instead that you will encounter moments designed to test your judgment. Someone may challenge your patience, something may disrupt your plan, something within you may feel resistance to what is required. Prepare not to avoid these moments, but to meet them without surrendering your reason. A prepared mind is not surprised into disorder. When disturbance arises, the first task is not correction of the outside world, but correction of your interpretation. Ask what exactly has been disturbed. Is it your body, or is it your judgment about what just occurred? The body may experience discomfort, but peace belongs to judgment. Once you understand this separation, you begin to see that most suffering comes from unnecessary conclusions added too quickly to neutral events. A delay becomes disrespect, a mistake becomes failure, a disagreement becomes threat. None of these meanings are contained in the event itself. They are added by the mind. Self-command is the practice of refusing to accept every interpretation that appears in your thinking. Thoughts will continue to arise, that is natural, but you are not required to agree with them. You are not required to act upon them. You are not required to believe them immediately. The disciplined mind introduces distance between thought and response. In that space, reason regains authority. Notice how often your peace is interrupted, not by major events, but by small reactions left unexamined. A tone of voice you did not expect, a glance you interpreted personally, a minor inconvenience that escalated only because it was not questioned. These moments reveal where self-command is still weak. They are not failures to be hidden. They are signals pointing to where training must continue. When you feel agitation rising, do not add to it with narrative. Stop explaining it to yourself, as if explanation justifies its expansion. Instead, return to the simplest possible question: what is within my control in this moment? Your control does not extend to what others have done. It does not extend to what has already occurred. It does not extend to external conditions. It extends only to your judgment and your next action. Everything else belongs to necessity, not command. Many people mistake emotional resistance for meaningful insight. They believe that because something feels strongly disturbing, it must require strong reaction. This is a misunderstanding of the mind. Emotion is not a guide to truth. It is a signal that must be examined, not obeyed. Strength of feeling does not equal correctness of judgment. A calm judgment, examined through reason, is more reliable than a loud emotion demanding immediate expression. Self-command is not suppression. It is governance. Suppression denies awareness. Governance examines awareness and directs it. You do not destroy emotion. You understand it. You do not silence thought. You evaluate it. You do not eliminate disturbance. You refuse to let disturbance determine your conduct. This distinction is what separates impulsive reaction from disciplined action. There will be moments when your environment feels overwhelming. Too many demands, too many voices, too many expectations pressing simultaneously. In such moments, the mind tends to scatter. It tries to resolve everything at once and loses clarity in the process. Return deliberately to a single point of focus. What is the next right action? Not the entire future, not the entire problem, only the next action aligned with reason. Self-command always returns attention to the present step rather than the imagined weight of everything ahead. As the day continues, observe how often your mood attempts to dictate your judgment. Fatigue tells you to abandon effort. Frustration tells you to respond sharply. Anxiety tells you to avoid responsibility. Desire tells you to prioritize comfort. None of these voices deserve final authority. They are conditions of the body or passing movements of thought. Reason remains separate from them. It does not disappear when they appear. It simply waits to be chosen. To strengthen self-command, practice deliberately allowing small discomforts without immediate reaction. Wait a moment before responding to irritation. Complete a task without seeking distraction when boredom arises. Listen fully before preparing your reply in conversation. These small disciplines train the mind to recognize that reaction does not need to become action. Over time, the space between impulse and response expands, and within that space your freedom grows. Much of what disturbs people is not the intensity of events, but the speed of judgment. The mind rushes to assign meaning before understanding is complete. Slow this process intentionally. Do not accept the first interpretation that appears. Question it, examine it, test it against reason. Ask whether it reflects reality or merely preference. Many disturbances dissolve when they are no longer fed by immediate agreement. Your peace will not become permanent by changing external conditions. It becomes stable when external conditions lose authority over your inner state. This stability is not achieved once. It is practiced repeatedly through countless moments of choosing reason over reaction. Each choice strengthens the next. Each interruption of impulse reinforces clarity. Each refusal to surrender judgment builds endurance within the mind. In relationships, self-command appears as restraint before speech. Not every reaction deserves expression. Not every irritation requires correction. Not every disagreement requires immediate resolution. Speak only when words serve truth and justice, not when they serve emotional release. Many conflicts grow larger because reactions are spoken before they are examined. Silence, when guided by reason, often protects relationships more effectively than unexamined speech. As evening arrives, review your conduct with honesty. Where did external events disturb your inner state unnecessarily? Where did you allow interpretation to escalate beyond what was reasonable? Where did emotion speak before judgment was examined? Do not judge yourself harshly, but do not avoid truth. Improvement depends upon clear recognition of where self-command was weak. Over time, you will begin to notice a subtle but profound shift. Events that once controlled your mood begin losing influence. You still experience them, but they no longer define your internal condition. Disturbance appears and passes without leaving lasting disorder. The mind becomes less reactive and more observant. Judgment becomes slower, clearer, and more deliberate. This is the beginning of true independence from external instability. Self-command does not mean life becomes easier. It means you become more stable within whatever life presents. Difficulty still arrives. Uncertainty still appears. People still act unpredictably. Yet none of these conditions determine your inner state unless you abandon reason. Peace becomes something you carry rather than something you receive. The final measure of your discipline is simple. When external events lose the power to dictate your inner condition, You are no longer ruled by circumstance, you are governed by judgment. When judgment is governed by reason rather than reaction, nothing outside can fully disturb your peace. This is not a distant ideal. It is a practice repeated in every moment where you choose awareness before impulse, clarity before reaction, and reason before disturbance. Number 10. Live each day according to reason and become unbreakable within. There is a version of you that already knows what reason asks. It is the part that sees clearly before emotion arrives, the part that understands what is just before pride interferes, the part that recognizes what must be done before hesitation begins its excuses. Yet most people do not live from that part of themselves. They live from reaction, they live from impulse, they live from whatever thought appears first and demands attention loudest. Over time, this creates a life that feels scattered, unstable, and increasingly difficult to trust. Not because life is chaotic by nature, but because judgment is left ungoverned. To live each day according to reason is not to live without feeling. It is to refuse being ruled by feeling. It is to place judgment before impulse, understanding before reaction, and principle before convenience. Reason does not arrive to remove difficulty from your life. It arrives to ensure you are not destroyed by your response to difficulty. External events will continue to shift without warning. People will still misunderstand you. Plans will still break. Circumstances will still resist your preferences. None of this is within your command, but your interpretation of these events remains entirely within your authority. Most suffering does not begin with events. It begins with interpretation that was never questioned. A delay becomes rejection. A mistake becomes identity. A disagreement becomes hostility. A challenge becomes proof of inadequacy. These interpretations arise quickly, and because they arise quickly, they feel true. Yet speed has never been a measure of truth. The mind must be trained to slow its acceptance of impressions so that reason has space to examine them before they become beliefs. To become unbreakable within is not to become unaffected. It is to become ungoverned by what is outside your control. It is to remain steady even while circumstances move. It is to preserve clarity even while conditions shift. It is to hold your center not because the world becomes gentle, but because your judgment becomes disciplined. The world does not owe you stability. Your mind must learn to create it. Begin each day by recognizing that you will encounter situations designed to test your judgment, not to punish you, but to reveal you. Every interruption, every disagreement, every inconvenience becomes a mirror reflecting the current strength of your inner discipline. If you meet these moments with automatic reaction, you remain governed by habit. If you meet them with examination, you begin to govern yourself. Before the day accelerates, set a clear intention that no external event will be allowed to bypass reason. You will not accept every impression without question. You will not respond to every irritation without examination. You will not allow emotion to dictate action before judgment is complete. This is not a promise of perfection. It is a commitment to awareness. Throughout the day, notice how often the mind tries to convince you that immediate reaction is necessary. Someone speaks sharply, and the mind demands defense. Something fails, and the mind demands blame. Something succeeds, and the mind demands praise. In each case, reason is pushed aside by urgency that feels convincing, but is rarely justified. The disciplined mind refuses this urgency. It pauses, it observes, it evaluates. Only then does it act. To live according to reason requires separating what belongs to you from what does not. What belongs to you is your judgment, your intention, your choice, and your response. What does not belong to you is the behavior of others, the unfolding of events, the outcome of effort, and the approval of the world. Confusion between these two domains is the root of disturbance. When you attempt to control what is not yours, frustration becomes inevitable. When you neglect what is yours, disorder follows. Many people exhaust themselves trying to control outcomes while neglecting the discipline of their own thinking. They focus on results instead of reasoning. They focus on external validation instead of internal alignment. Yet the only stable foundation available to human life is the quality of judgment that guides action. If judgment is clear, even failure becomes instructive. If judgment is unclear, even success becomes unstable. Each reaction you experience offers an opportunity to train this clarity. When something disturbs you, do not immediately search for resolution outside yourself. First, examine the interpretation that created the disturbance. Ask whether it reflects reality or preference. Ask whether it serves reason or emotion. Ask whether it strengthens character or weakens it. This internal questioning transforms every moment of disturbance into practice for stability. There will be times when you fail to apply this discipline. You will react too quickly. You will speak before thinking. You will allow emotion to lead judgment. These moments are not proof of incapacity. They are evidence that training is still incomplete. Do not convert mistakes into identity. Convert them into instruction. Every failure becomes useful only when it is examined rather than repeated unconsciously. Living according to reason also requires restraint in speech. Words spoken without examination often create consequences that reason later struggles to repair. Before speaking, ask whether your words are necessary, truthful, and aligned with what is just. Many conversations become heavier than needed because reaction speaks before judgment is complete. Silence, when guided by reason, is not absence of strength. It is expression of control. You will notice that as reason becomes more active in your daily conduct, emotional intensity begins to lose authority over your decisions. You still feel anger, but it no longer commands behavior. You still feel desire, but it no longer dictates action. You still feel fear, but it no longer determines direction. Feelings remain present, but they are no longer rulers. They become signals that are examined rather than obeyed. This shift is not dramatic at first. It appears quietly in small moments. A delay that once ruined your mood becomes manageable. A disagreement that once consumed your thoughts becomes brief. A failure that once defined your identity becomes temporary feedback. These changes are not caused by external improvement, but by internal reorganization of judgment. To strengthen this transformation, practice returning repeatedly to the present action in front of you. Do not allow the mind to scatter into imagined futures or repeated pasts. Reason operates most clearly in the present moment, where action is possible. When overwhelmed, reduce focus to the next right step rather than the entire burden of the situation. Clarity is restored not by solving everything at once, but by returning attention to what can actually be done now. At the end of each day, review your conduct without distortion. Ask where reason was present and where it was absent. Observe moments where impulse spoke too quickly. Notice where external events influenced your inner state more than they should have. Do not perform this examination as punishment. Perform it as refinement. A disciplined life is built through continuous correction, not occasional effort. Over time, something subtle but profound begins to emerge. The distance between event and reaction expands. In that space, reason gains strength. You begin to notice that nothing outside you can fully determine your inner condition unless you abandon that space. When you protect it, nothing external can fully break you because nothing external can directly govern your judgment. Unbreakability is not the absence of pressure. It is the presence of disciplined interpretation under pressure. It is the ability to remain aligned with principle even when conditions attempt to pull you away from it. It is the decision to remain governed by reason even when emotion offers faster but less reliable direction. If you continue this practice, there will come a point where external events still occur, but they no longer define your stability. Praise does not inflate you, criticism does not collapse you, success does not distort you, failure does not define you. Each is processed through reason before becoming meaning. At that point, life is no longer something that happens to you, it becomes something you respond to with clarity. This is the final discipline. Not control over the world, but control over judgment. Not elimination of disturbance, but mastery over interpretation. Not escape from difficulty, but stability within it. Each day lived according to reason strengthens this foundation until it becomes the natural state of your mind. And when judgment is consistently governed by reason, nothing outside can fully break what has been built within you.